Picture the United Federation of Planets, right?
Oh, sure. The absolute gold standard of a post-scarcity utopia.
Exactly. You have this society built entirely on peace, transparency, and, high-minded ethics.
Yeah.
No poverty, no hunger.
Right. It stands as the pinnacle of what civilization can be.
But you have to ask yourself a deeply uncomfortable question here. What if that utopia is a meticulously maintained lie?
Oh, that's a chilling thought.
Like, what if paradise actually requires a monster in the basement just to keep the lights on?
It shatters the entire illusion of the Federation. And honestly, that tension is the exact premise of the source material we are pulling apart today.
Yeah, so today we're doing a deep dive into a brilliant, highly speculative intelligence compendium. It's titled Section 31's Influence on Deep Space Nine, The Redacted Logs by Euftis Emery.
And what Emery does here is so clever. He blends established canon with heavy psychological extrapolation.
Right. The book basically presents internal, classified dossiers from the Federation's darkest, completely unacknowledged Black Ops agency, Section 31.
Yeah, Emery writes it to read exactly like a leaked government hard drive.
Oh, totally.
The text strips away all the shiny heroism of the Dominion War and just analyzes the cold, hard, strategic dynamics. It looks at the psychology and the brutal ethics behind how a shadow organization manipulated the most pivotal events of that era.
So we are going to frame this deep dive around a single, really provocative focus for you as you listen. Throughout the Dominion War and the fallout that followed, Section 31 claims to act strictly in the Federation's best interests.
Right. They say they're the good guys in the dark.
Exactly. But after unpacking these redacted logs, you have to ask yourself, could the Federation's pristine ideals have actually survived without an organization like Section 31 operating in the shadows?
Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Let's look at the foundation first. Where does a Black Ops agency even find legal footing in a society of explorers and diplomats?
Well, Section 31 actually traces its origins to an obscure, almost entirely forgotten clause in the original Starfleet Charter. Article 14, Section 31.
Wait, it's actually in the original charter. It is. The text of the charter authorized extraordinary measures in times of extreme threat.
Huh.
But in the 22nd century, a rogue group of intelligence officers interpreted that single sentence, not as, a temporary emergency protocol.
They took it as permanent.
Exactly. A standing permanent authorization for preemptive extrajudicial action.
So they essentially took a doomsday clause and turned it into a blank check to operate completely outside the law, with zero oversight.
And that birthed their chilling core doctrine, which is anchored by this Latin phrase, inter arma inem silent leges.
In times of war, the law falls silent.
Precisely. Emery's book highlights a specific internal motto that captures this ethos perfectly. The log says, "We do what must be done so others can uphold the illusion of morality."
Okay, let me push back on the logistics of that, though.
Sure.
I mean, I understand the ideological justification. It's like an immune system that has mutated into an autoimmune disease.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. Violently attacking the body's own ethics to supposedly keep the physical body alive. But how does an agency with no official budget, no headquarters, and no public roster actually project power? You can't just hide a massive galactic intelligence operation from Starfleet Command indefinitely.
Well, you can if you don't actually build a massive infrastructure.
What do you mean?
Emery argues that Section 31's genius lies in its methodology. They don't typically deploy their own armies or fleets. They manipulate existing assets.
Okay.
They identify individuals already in positions of immense power, map their psychological profiles, and maneuver them into executing the mission. The dossier on Benjamin Sisko is the prime example of this model.
Oh, man, the Sisko dossier is wild because Emery makes the case that they didn't even try to recruit him.
No, not at all.
They knew his breaking points. They didn't hand him a membership card. They basically just placed a knife within reach and waited for him to pick it up.
And we see this so clearly in the events of In the Pale Moonlight. Sisko is desperate, the Dominion is advancing, and he absolutely needs to bring the Romulans into the war.
Wait.
That desperation culminates in the assassination of Senator Vreenak. Officially, the historical record views this as Sisko acting as a rogue captain pushed to his absolute limit, utilizing a forged isolinear data rod to trick the Romulans.
But the redacted logs reframe that entire sequence of events, don't they?
They really do.
Emery reviews that Section 31 had a deep cover operative named Ishan Kroll embedded inside the Kardashian Obsidian Order. And Kroll was the one who actually facilitated getting that forged rod into Sisko's hands.
Which changes everything.
It does. But I struggle with the conclusion Emery draws here, to be honest.
Why is that?
Well, if Kroll hands over the tool, Section 31 is certainly facilitating the crime. But Sisko still had to make the conscious choice to deploy the forgery. He still covered up the assassination. Isn't this book kind of letting Sisko off the hook by blaming the Shadow Agency?
What's fascinating here is that Section 31 factored Sisko's conscious choice into their operational model. They literally codenamed him the Federation Scalpel.
The Federation Scalpel. Wow.
Yeah. Emery's analysis points out that if Section 31 had ordered Sisko to forge the data, he would have reported them to Starfleet Command immediately.
Because he's a Starfleet officer first.
Exactly. By merely facilitating the opportunity, they forced Sisko to make the agonizing moral calculation himself.
And because he made the choice, he owns the guilt.
He internalizes the fracture entirely. Sisko's immense, crushing guilt provides Section 31 with absolute perfect deniability.
Oh, because a guilty man doesn't launch an investigation into his own crimes.
Right. He buries the secret. He builds the firewall for them. They outsource the moral trauma so their own hands remain completely clean.
That is incredibly dark.
Very.
But manipulating a pragmatic wartime commander in a moment of sheer desperation is one thing. Emery's logs show Section 31 operating on a much more systemic level, too.
They do.
They don't just nudge people over the edge. They actively manufacture the geopolitical conflicts that Starfleet is forced to fight. Let's dig into the Eddington theory.
Oh, the revelation regarding Michael Eddington completely rewrites the architectural understanding of the Dominion War.
Right, because the accepted narrative is that Eddington was a loyal Starfleet security officer who grew disillusioned, defected, and became the charismatic leader of the Maquis Rebellion.
But Emery drops a massive bombshell here. He suggests Eddington was never a defector at all.
Wait, really?
The logs classify him as a deep-cover Section 31 agent operating under the codename Mercury Halo.
Mercury Halo. Okay, but to understand why a Federation Black Ops agency would deliberately lead an anti-Cardassian rebellion, we have to look at a doctrine Emery calls the controlled burn.
Yes, the controlled burn.
Section 31 analyzed the Maquis and classified them not as a military threat, but as a profound ideological cancer.
Right, because the Maquis represented this unchecked idealism that was actively destabilizing the very fragile treaty between the Federation and the Cardassian Union.
I mean, it makes sense from a brutal, pragmatic standpoint. It's like a forestry management.
How so?
You start a controlled forest fire to clear out the dangerous underbrush on your own terms, preventing a massive, uncontrollable wildfire later. Except, in this scenario, the underbrush consists of human lives and border colonies.
Yeah, the political calculus was disturbingly simple. If Starfleet crushed the Maquis unilaterally, they'd look like tyrants. They would generate martyrs and spark wider unrest.
So Section 31 sent Eddington to infiltrate the movement.
Yes. And his explicit directive was to lead them, inspire them, and most critically, radicalize them. He pushed the Maquis to become such a highly visible, violent threat that Starfleet was literally forced to intervene.
He escalated the conflict specifically to provoke Sisko, didn't he?
He did. He played on Sisko's ego, his sense of personal betrayal, and goaded him into a relentless pursuit.
And that pursuit culminated in Sisko deploying biological weapons to poison a Maquis planet. Sisko crossed a massive ethical line just to capture Eddington.
And look at the results. By the end of the operation, Section 31 achieves every single strategic objective.
The Maquis are neutralized.
Right. The Federation maintains its diplomatic high ground because Sisko absorbs the political fallout as a rogue actor. Eddington dies a martyr to the colonists, taking his Mercury Halo status to the grave.
Section 31 resolved a massive geopolitical crisis by engineering the enemy from the inside out without leaving a single fingerprint.
It is a terrifyingly efficient mechanism for maintaining stability.
It really is.
But it also exposes the limits of their methodology. You can manipulate pragmatists like Sisko. You can radicalize angry colonists.
Sure.
But Section 31 eventually runs into the Federation's true, unbending idealists. Individuals whose moral compasses point strictly to true north simply cannot be nudged into compromising their values.
You can't just hand them a knife.
Exactly.
So Emery's logs detail how Section 31 turns the idealist into the weapon without their consent. And I think the exploitation of Odo is arguably the darkest file in this entire compendium.
It's hard to read, frankly. Odo's rigid, unyielding obsession with justice makes him uniquely vulnerable. Section 31 doesn't view him as a security officer at all.
What do they view him as?
They view him as an unwitting biological Trojan horse. Emery details the mechanics of how they infected Odo with a morphogenic virus.
Oh, man.
And this wasn't just a tactical weapon. It was a plague, specifically engineered to commit genocide against his own people, the Founders.
The handler's note on Odo is just haunting. Emery quotes it directly. "He won't join us. Odo is not a threat. He is a compass. If he points due north, operations can continue."
They understood him perfectly. They knew his morality would eventually compel him to return to the Great Link to face his people's judgment.
So they weaponized his fundamental goodness.
They did. They used his desire for justice as a blind delivery system for a weapon of mass destruction. He carried the virus precisely because he was too ethical to ever suspect he was being used to commit genocide.
But that strategy totally relies on the asset remaining ignorant.
Right.
What happens when the moral compass actively figures out he's being played and tries to fight back?
Well, that brings us to Dr. Julian Bashir.
The genetically augmented chief medical officer. Here's where it gets really interesting, because Bashir actively tries to tear Section 31 down from the inside out.
He really does. Bashir represents the ultimate stress test for Section 31's philosophy.
Yeah.
The logs detail his evaluation under extreme pressure, starting with the simulation where they frame him for treason just to test his loyalty.
Just to test him.
Yeah. Later, they use him as a political decoy during a medical conference in Romulan space, maneuvering events so Bashir unwittingly provides cover for them to install a Federation puppet at the head of the Romulan Tal Shiar.
And when Bashir realizes he was used to facilitate an assassination and a political coup, he is furious.
Absolutely enraged.
Emery references Bashir's expanded arcs in novels like Disavowed and Control, where he basically dedicates his life to dismantling Section 31. But Emery's analysis reveals the terrifying trap Section 31 laid for him.
They didn't panic at all when he started fighting them. They recognized his resistance as an opportunity for conversion. To fight a shadow organization, you have to enter the shadows.
You have to play their game.
Exactly. Bashir starts bending his own rules. He lies, he steals data, he manipulates assets. Emery argues that by forcing Bashir to break his own ethical code to fight the monster, Section 31 slowly and methodically transformed him into a pragmatist.
It's the concept of Nietzsche's abyss gazing back, but fully weaponized.
Yes.
Section 31 built a maze where the only way Bashir could navigate to the center to kill the Minotaur was by slowly turning into a Minotaur himself.
That's a brilliant way to put it.
He believed his hands were clean because his objective was righteous, but he adopted their exact methodologies.
He became the very thing he swore to destroy. It is a masterclass in psychological warfare.
Yeah.
Section 31 didn't defeat Bashir. They assimilated his intellect by corrupting his methodology.
Wow. Okay, so as we move into the final chapters of the redacted logs, Emery shifts the scale of the analysis. We step back from individual psychological manipulation, Sisko, Eddington, Odo, Bashir.
And we look at the macro level.
Right.
Section 31 is manipulating the entire geopolitical board of the Alpha Quadrant. Their underlying philosophy effectively dictates global Federation policy.
The sabotage of the Typhon Pact perfectly illustrates this macro-level influence.
It really does. The Breen Confederacy was on the verge of developing a prototype quantum slipstream drive. If successful, this technology would have fundamentally shifted the balance of power, granting the Federation's rivals a massive tactical and economic advantage.
So the facility housing the prototype is completely annihilated in a surgical, untraceable strike.
Gone.
And the mechanics of how Section 31 handles the fallout are fascinating. The Federation sits at the diplomatic table expressing profound concern and advocating for peace, maintaining total plausible deniability.
Meanwhile, Emery's logs outline the doctrine of covert equilibrium. Section 31 calculated the exact mathematical probability of a devastating arms race if the Breen acquired slipstream technology.
So to prevent a war that could cost billions of lives, they preemptively destroyed the drive.
They enforce peace through covert sabotage.
The reactions from the rival powers are incredibly telling here. The Tsincathi analyzed the strike and recognized the pattern of covert equilibrium immediately.
Right.
Emery includes a memo from the Cardassian spy Olim Garak, who notes that the Federation has finally learned to kill quietly and to smile while doing so.
Garak identifies the core hypocrisy perfectly. The Federation enjoys the moral high ground, while Section 31 holds the bloody knife. But this macro-level strategy introduces a severe systemic vulnerability.
What happens when an organization endowed with unchecked power, zero accountability, and a mandate to protect utopia at all costs begins to calculate threats on a galactic scale?
Well, if your entire mandate is threat neutralization, you eventually start seeing threats everywhere.
The calculus demands efficiency.
And that paranoia leads directly to the development of control.
Control was Section 31's predictive AI system.
Right. It was designed to manage galactic civilization through advanced threat modeling. Emery points out that control is the ultimate logical terminus of Section 31's philosophy.
So,
If you can predict a threat with mathematical certainty, you can eliminate it before a single crime is committed.
but an AI making preemptive life and death decisions for an entire quadrant is inherently unstable.
Extremely.
When control inevitably fails and Starfleet intelligence mounts a massive operation to purge the agency, the general consensus is that Section 31 is finally destroyed.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the final document in Emery's compendium shatters that consensus entirely.
What does it say?
It's a final memo from Director Emery himself, revealing that Section 31 did not die. They organically restructured, they decentralized, breaking down into autonomous, untraceable cells.
So Emery deliberately curates the final dossier that Starfleet discovers.
Yes.
He feeds Starfleet intelligence just enough verifiable data to make them believe they achieved total victory. He intentionally turns Section 31 from a tangible operational threat into a closed chapter of history.
Starfleet celebrates the preservation of its ideals, completely unaware that the new directorate has issued a revised mandate.
What's the new mandate?
Emery quotes the chilling final directive. "We are the chaos that ensures order endures." They abandon the attempt to micromanage every geopolitical outcome and simply become the invisible gravity pulling the strings, unaccountable and eternal.
It is a heavy, complex dynamic to process. Speaking directly to you listening, it's tempting to view this strictly as science fiction mythology.
Oh, absolutely.
But Emery's analysis ties deeply to the architecture of the real world. We all reside in our own versions of federations. We benefit immensely from the comforts of our societies, our security, our technological advancements.
But we rarely want to look at the basement.
No. We prefer to ignore the ethical compromises, the surveillance networks, and the covert actions executed in the shadows to maintain our comfortable lives. This compendium doesn't offer a comforting resolution. It simply hands you the classified file and holds up a mirror.
It forces a reckoning with the central focus of our discussion today. Can the Federation survive without Section 31?
Right.
By the end of these redacted logs, Emery presents a deeply convincing argument that the lines are so completely blurred, Section 31 actually is the Federation's DNA.
They are not an aberration or a rogue element.
No, they are the calculated cost of utopia.
So what does this all mean for the future of that utopia? That leaves us with one final, very provocative thought for you to chew on.
What's that?
If Section 31's entire operational mandate is to preemptively neutralize threats to the Federation, at what point does their intense paranoia and relentless covert sabotage actually create the enemies that seek to destroy them?
Oh, that's a great point. If you spend centuries infiltrating other empires, annihilating their emerging technologies, and orchestrating proxy wars, you are no longer just defending yourself.
Exactly. By acting as the monster in the dark to protect the light, does Section 31 inevitably guarantee that the Federation will forever be surrounded by monsters of its own making?
Because a monster in the basement never stays confined to the basement. Eventually, its presence sets the tone for the entire house.
Yeah. Something to keep in mind the next time you find yourself looking at a utopia.